Hi everyone, this is Marianne and welcome to my channel, and I hope you are enjoying the 12 pens of Christmas from everythingcalligraphy.com. So far, we are already on our third video in this series, and today we are going to look at a Jinhao pen. Now, Jinhao pens are Chinese pens, and I have always been intrigued by the designs. Those are designs that I have never seen before in another pen, and I like that they are so super affordable. And in the description box, I have placed the link to the page in the Everything Calligraphy website where you can purchase this pen. But once you purchase this pen, it will come in this box. It is a Chinese pen, like I have mentioned, so it will have some Chinese inscriptions on them. And inside that simple orange cardboard box is this box. It is a black one that is wrapped in some kind of leather-like material that is not real leather. It has the silver embossed Jinhao logo at the front, and it opens up like a clamshell, and the interior is a pink suede-like material, and the pen is right there nestled on the tray, and it looks so awesome, you guys. This pen is the Jinhao FP Dragon, and you can actually take out the tray from the box, but you don't really need to. And this is the pen right here. It's an actual snake, and there's more than one snake on this pen, and I will discuss the details of the exterior of the pen with you later on. But for now, let us just take a moment to admire this pen. I think this pen really is a scene stealer. Now, I also have another Jinhao pen. It's the 999 Dragon, and I used it as my pen for One Book July in 2016, and it has always gotten a lot of reactions whenever I whip it out in public. But this is the snake that I really like. The top of the cap has that, I think it's a king cobra on there. Um, and then below the king cobra is a sort of band. It's a decorative band that is actually in two different layers, as you can see. And then below that is another snake that is coiled, which has green eyes, whereas the king cobra has red eyes. And then this second snake on the cap that has green eyes does not look like a cobra, but I think it still looks pretty fierce as a snake. And then below that snake is the Jinhao band, and that is actually the end of the cap that is marked by that gold band there that says Jinhao. And then below that band is another snake, which looks very similar to the second snake. It also has green eyes, and it is positioned in the mirror image of that second snake, as you can see right here. So there are three different snakes on this pen, and it really is something else. If you can see it in person, it really makes a statement, and it looks more expensive than it actually is. The cap screws off, so the first and second snakes actually get separated from the third snake, and the grip is just a plain black plastic. The nib is also nothing special. It is just an ordinary steel nib. It has Jinhao on there, and the end of the barrel has these threads on them, which you can use if you want to post the cap on the pen without it falling off, because the cap is very heavy. Now the barrel screws off to reveal the converter. It is also a Jinhao converter, as you can see there. I think that is the outline of the Jinhao logo. This is also the same converter that is in my Dragon 999 Jinhao pen. But one thing that I must mention about this converter is that it does not seem very secure, and also it seems quite scratchy. I tried adjusting the piston up and down. It seems very scratchy to me. It does not feel smooth, and then it does not feel secure installed inside the pen, but we'll see. At this point, let us have some actual measurements of the pen. I have an old tape measure right here, and when the pen is capped, it measures about 15.5 centimeters. When it is uncapped, the length is 12.5 centimeters. And when the cap is posted using those threads that I showed earlier, the pen becomes very, very long. It becomes 18.5 centimeters long. And the pen is, the snakes on this pen are made of metal, so it's a very, very heavy pen. I think a lot of you are going to agree with me when I say over and over actually that this is a very striking pen, and at certain angles the red eyes of the king cobra actually lights up because it is made of red stone, so it's kind of reflective, and those two snakes on the body and the cap of the pen add to the effect. So now let's try to actually write with this pen. I have decided to use my Diamine Oxblood with this pen because I think the color is close to the color of the eyes of that king cobra at the top of the pen. And by the way, I have always liked this color because it is close to the color of dried blood, but I have never really gotten much opportunity to use it, so I'm taking the opportunity to use it now. I have decided to keep the cap screwed to the end of the pen while refilling the converter that is already installed inside the pen. And like I mentioned earlier, the converter of this pen does not feel very secure, and the piston inside does not feel very smooth. I don't really remember if my Dragon Jinhao 999 pen converter feels and performs the same way, but that is one of the things that I don't like about this pen. Okay, now in fairness to Jinhao, it has the ordinary steel nib that are kind of hard and they don't have any flex to them. But the nib does write very well out of the box. You can see me here letting the pen write with just its own weight, and it starts instantly and it lays down a solid, consistent line. So that's a good thing. Writing with it, too, is a very comfortable experience. It is not a hard starter. The pen does not skip at all, considering that I did not do the soaking step with this. I did not soak the nib initially in a cup of water with a few drops of dishwashing liquid, and it writes just a little bit dry, so it is not as smooth as other pens. It's not scratchy, but it does not glide as well. It sort of like drags just a little bit on the page, but just look at how it looks. And I can forgive a pen that does not perform 100% perfectly if it looks as awesome as that. Now, I know this is just a Jinhao and it's just technically a very, very cheap Chinese pen, but I have never really been a fountain pen snob. I embrace all kinds of fountain pens from all brands and from all price ranges, and I can appreciate a hard steel nib just as much as I can appreciate a flexible gold nib. I've never really been discriminatory in my fountain pen use, and maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know, but I just make it a point to enjoy whatever I can about any fountain pen that I am using. Just as with this fountain pen that we have right here, as you can see, there is no skipping on the nib. It starts right away and it lays down a consistent line and it writes reasonably well. But as you can notice, when I started writing those brisk up and down strokes, the pen started to write more wetly. And I tried to write faster to see if that can make the pen write even wetter, and it did. But when I went back to writing the usual figures of eight and I did it faster, it did not write wet. However, when I wrote those short vertical lines, the pen wrote more wetly than it did when I was writing the figures of eight. Now, this is because ink usually pools at the end of every line, and when I am making the figures of eight, though that is just one continuous line, so there is not much opportunity and space for the ink to pool. So that's just another factor to consider when assessing how a fountain pen writes. We should also look at the kind of strokes that we are doing. Like for instance, you may observe that when writing with a fountain pen in cursive, the lines are lighter and there is less pooling of the ink, so there is less shading when the ink dries. But when we are writing in print, the ink is darker and there is more pooling, so when the ink dries there's more shading. So that's really a factor. If we write long continuous lines, there is less ink that is pooling on the lines that we lay down. However, with this one continuous jagged line, the ink probably pools because of the corners that the jagged line produces. The corners act sort of like similar to the end of a particular line, so the ink pools there. That's what I'm suspecting. So I just continued scribbling with a pen, and then I thought maybe the wetness of the pen also has something to do with the angle in which I hold the pen. So I unscrewed the cap from the end so that it will be easier for me to handle because it's a very long pen when the cap is posted. So I thought maybe it's in the angle that I'm holding the pen. I tried to look for the sweet spot. So at first I held the pen in a more upright angle, as you can see there, and the line is, well, pretty wet. It looks pretty normal. But when I angled it down, the lines became fatter and wetter. And then when I angled the pen up again, the lines looked drier and thinner. And then when I angled the pen down even more, the lines became thicker and wetter. So, well, that is true of almost all fountain pens actually. And I never tried that with the other fountain pens that I have reviewed, but it's something that you can look into when assessing the performance of your fountain pen. And you can also look at the angle that you normally hold the pen. That really affects how wet the pen writes. And if you look at the underside of the nib, you will be able to see the tipping material, and some tipping materials are rounder than others, so that's another factor to consider. But really, mileages vary. With such a pen as the Jinhao, it's very, very cheap, and I'm thinking that the manufacturing process of this pen is not very, the quality control is not very strict. So it really varies. Some pens can write wetter than others. Some pens write finer than others. So we don't really know. But with this particular pen, I actually like it. Look at that ox blood ink that looks like dried blood. It looks really, really fantastic. And I actually want to buy this pen. I'm supposed to return it to Everything Calligraphy once I'm done with the review, but I want to buy this pen from them. I am not going to return it anymore. Instead, I am going to pay for this because it's really a very cheap pen, you guys. It's the same price as my Dragon 999 pen. which I also got from Everything Calligraphy in 2016. But the pen looks really, really, really good. I have whipped this out during meetings, and then people actually stopped what they were doing and what they were saying because they wanted to look at the pen and hold the pen, and somebody actually thought and said out loud that I must be so rich to be able to afford a pen like that. But I said, but of course, with a pen like this, people are going to want to hold it. And the danger with letting others use your fountain pen is that sometimes people actually forget to return it to you. So, what I do is I actually take the cap off and hold it in my hand while I am writing with it in the presence of other people, so that any moment they want to borrow my pen or hold my pen in their hands and try writing with it, when they're done, they are gonna be forced to return the pen to me, because without the cap on, they are going to either stain their pockets with ink or accidentally stab themselves with a nib. When I am writing and I'm alone, I just leave the cap on the surface of the pen. But when I am writing with a fountain pen in the presence of others, I make it a point to hold the cap in my other hand and just write with the cap unposted, because my hands are very, very small anyway. And especially with this pen, with a very long cap, with a very heavy cap, with an extremely heavy end that is comprised of the King Cobra right there, it is very, very difficult to write comfortably with a cap on. So I really, really would just take the cap off and not post the cap when I am writing with this pen. So if you have very, very small hands like mine, which is like 17 centimeters long, you can still write with this pen. You just don't post the cap. But I do realize that the look of the pen is somewhat diminished if you don't post the cap. So if you want to make a statement, just keep the cap on, because it looks really, really awesome, you guys. It looks really awesome. All in all, my conclusion would be that I highly recommend this pen. I still recommend that you purchase it. Now, I cannot assure you that you will have the exact same writing performance as me, because I'm keeping this pen, but if in case you get a hard starting pen, I think it's worth it for you to just take the time to smoothen out the nib by writing with it or soaking it, because it's really, really worth it, you guys. Just for the reaction that you can get when other people see you writing with this pen, it's really totally worth it. And that is my review for you today. This is the third pen of the 12 pens of Christmas from everythingcalligraphy.com. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you catch me again tomorrow for the review of the fourth pen. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!